with Joe. On this episode, Henry Merschman, president of Merschman Fertilizer, talks about the current state of the fertilizer industry, then addresses why farmers are seeing green stems on soybeans at harvest. What's going on in the Supreme Court with the waters of the United States?
Hi, this is Joe Merschman. Welcome to Merschman Seeds Cup of Joe. Today we have Turk and Ben, and we have a special guest, my brother Henry, and we brought him in for one reason, talk about fertilizer prices.
I will start out, just go through them, the nitrogen, phosphate, and potash, and I think the biggest news out there is what's going on in Europe. Europe, with the war going on, they've shut off natural gas going to feed a lot of the plants in Europe. Today, natural gas in Europe is $60. In the U.S., it's $7. So just to give you an idea, like on urea or ammonia, it costs $1,510 a ton more to produce urea at $60 than it does in Europe than it does in the U.S. In ammonia, it costs $2,100 more. So because of that, like right now, it's estimated that CF Industries, who has large plants down in Donaldsonville, they're going to export probably close to 1 million ton of UAN, and they just tightens the market. They're taking it out of the U.S. and so thus demand has been strong for nitrogen with all these plants shut down in Europe. And they can easily go over there and make a lot more money, and so they're doing that.
So the U.S. is exporting every drop of nitrogen they possibly can.
They're exporting a lot.
A lot. And that takes away from our U.S.
Takes
supply.
away from the U.S. instead of import. And a lot of times we get imports that come over, and so these imports aren't coming over either. They're going over there too. So it's tightened the market up.
So most farmers won't be sending Putin a Christmas card at Christmas this year.
I mean, I know we talked to our partner Yara, and they literally said they had large plants that the spigot was turned off.
And Yara's based out of Norway.
They're based out of Norway, and they had no gas coming to the plant. They had no choice but shut the plant down, and they have no idea when they're going to start.
Well, it's also a choice between heating and
that's what
fertilizer.
They said. When it gets
People's
to
homes.
The heat will come first. So it's creating a fairly tight nitrogen market, is what we're seeing, and but that's some big numbers. The phosphates, they've been pretty flat. I think what's kind of held them up a little bit is the ammonia has come up $300 since summer fill. It slowly came up, and you take MAP's got 11 units of nitrogen in, well that's $40 more, that makes that phosphate worth $40 more. And I think that's what has held it up to keep it fairly flat. Otherwise, we may have seen a little pressure on it. But now this hurricane did go through, it glanced off of what they call Bone Valley, where Mosaic's plants are, and flooding. They had to shut the plants down. They did confirm storm damage. They think they'll be back up in a week or two. But talking to Mosaic, they think the bigger issue is the rains, are there railroad lines that got washed out, or the infrastructure of getting products. So they project that there's going to be at least 250,000 tons of lost production in phosphate because of that hurricane, and it was not a direct hit.
And that's Central Florida.
Central Florida, they're kind of in between Tampa and Orlando. They own 250,000 acres. Yeah, they're a large landowner down there. And then we talk about the potash.
One question. Ahead. A lot of that comes up to Mississippi, that phosphate on barges, right? Then talk about the barge rates and the water levels.
I just got a note yesterday, and they were saying that the water levels dropped, and so number one, it's created a bigger basis on the grain. I don't know if because they can't haul as much, and barge rates have gone up significantly because of that. We're having low problems at our dock at Burlington, and we've even spent money dredging before this, and we're struggling getting our barges in. And if it gets any lower, I don't know what they're going to do. So that is a big deal, and so the infrastructure of getting product in a timely fashion and so forth is going to continue to be If we have any kind of run this fall on fertilizer, and we, with these high prices, the grain, everybody's kind of wondering what our yields are going to be. We could see some shortages toward the end, just because a lot of people are not, putting product in place because it costs a lot more money. There's a lot of unknowns, and they don't want to take the risk. And so, if we have any kind of normalcy, I don't think there's enough product up here to, and we can still get it here, but you got infrastructure problems.
And they're shutting the river down early too, aren't they?
I didn't hear that, but there are probably parts of it that will shut down. Yes.
Due to maintenance, usually, right?
Maintenance, scheduled maintenance.
Block maintenance. Yeah.
I don't know which one. I've not heard. Every barge company's got a different idea of when they want it. See, some will say, well, if you don't get the barge out by the 10th of October, then we can't, because, well, they don't leave till maybe December, but they want plenty of time to load grain back, see? And so everybody's got a different idea. But yeah, the river's starting to become an issue also. But on the potash, it seems like there's been pressure on the potash because, well, when Russia went in after Ukraine, then all of a sudden there was some Russian companies bringing potash over here, and then there was, okay, can they bring product over? Can we buy it? Can we sell it? And they sell it and so forth. So they basically did not enter the market when this was going on, and so they had customers that they had been furnishing product with, and then all of a sudden they couldn't supply it. So I think to get back in it, they seem to be very aggressive because now they can bring product back over here, and by doing that, they seem like they just keep putting pressure on the potash market. And then there was a large carryover on potash this last spring because of the tightness of the market before, and then we had a late spring, and we had cutbacks this spring, and so and so people are trying to chop through that old product first. So it seems like potash is the most bearish out there right now, and we just got to get moving, and I think it'll stabilize.
Prices are good, yields are pretty good for the most part. You're probably getting some people who want to spend some money.
Yeah, we think that a lot of people have positioned themselves, but they're not going to come back into the market yet until they get movement. But we see some traders out there that, they work out of New York and all this other stuff, and we're not selling anything. What's going on? And they have a tendency to say, we're going to find liquidity and we're just going to cut the price. And if they cut the price $40, it doesn't matter because the sheds are full and they haven't gone to the field yet, and they no place to put it, So it's sometimes it'll happen. It's going to take a little bit of time.
If you were advising a farmer, get to your local dealer and get that product on right behind the combine. Is that fair to say?
Every time I see guys wait, then you get logistic problems. You get trains that don't show up, or barges, and something happens, and or a plant goes down, and then you regret that you didn't get the work done. And the guys that get the work done typically are the ones that are typically more successful, obviously. So yeah, I'd get it on.
Yeah, because you got to think about it logistically too. I mean, okay, you empty all the bins this fall. You got to get product back in there for spring, and the river's closed. Yeah. So, you got a little short window in the spring to try to get product in, and that. So you're going to have fairly low inventory going into the middle of the winter, then, aren't you?
We think that a lot of people, again, because the prices were high, they have not. There's some guys some terminals that turn in the fall might turn it 4 or 5 times. So they got to have barges staged up there, ready to go. They can't order it. It takes 30 days to get up. We don't think they've staged enough barges up to take care of if we have a normal demand. Now, if the farmers decide to cut back 20-30%, like some people talk about, then maybe we're okay. But there's a lot of unknowns. So if it's unknown, you're going to take the safe route and not put too much product in a flat, and even in some instances down market.
Yeah, I think everybody's going to be holding very conservative on inventory because they want to make sure they got empty bins so they're not subject to price fluctuation either up or particularly down is what they're worried about more than up.
But you take they are higher prices, yes, but grain's high prices too. So they coincide. But you want to get a 30% discount on your fertilizer. All you do is buy it this fall because you can offset income, and that's a lot of people are saying that's going to happen. And we think in a lot of instances. I think most of the farmers overall had a pretty good year this year, because a lot of them that put on a year ago had the lower inputs and then got the higher price. So
always pays to plan ahead.
Oh yeah.
Anything else?
That's all I got.
Okay. We appreciate it, Henry. We appreciate it, and we'll keep us informed. If anything major change, we'll have it back on.
You'll have me back on?
That's right.
Thanks for helping me out. And I
I
appreciate
it is a privilege to be with.
I appreciate all the 3 people that watch this. Thanks for joining in. And
thanks, Henry. Well, always good to get a fertilizer report, whether we like it or not. But at least a farmer can plan a little bit. But it's just a tough time right now for farmers, and managing these inputs no different than businesses too. Everything's just nuts, and we don't like it, but we have to manage through it, and that creates opportunities if we do it right. So Ben, what do you think's going on out there in the field? I'm hearing a little bit about farmers saying on soybeans, that they're just not dropping their leaves. Things seem to be kind of hanging on.
Yep, it's one of the questions that we've gotten really over the past week and a half is why are our beans cutting so hard this year? And a lot of it comes back to the source and sink methodology. When you think about what is supplying the energy and where does that energy go to, is the main message for why we have a bunch of these green stems on our soybeans and these leaves that are still hanging on. So our source of energy is from the sunlight. The leaves create photosynthesis, which creates sugars for the plant, and the sink would be the beans themselves. And those sugars go into the pods and create the beans and allow for fill. But what happens when we have typically drought or anything that makes that sink smaller, than what the plant has energy to create, we end up with a pool of energy, and that pool of energy is sitting in the stems right now. So we had a fairly decent start to our spring. The plants got good height to them. We made it to flower time. The plants had enough moisture in the soil to put lots of flowers on, and then eventually we started getting pretty dry. And in that process of drought, the soybeans will abort flowers, they'll abort pods, and there's not as much place for that energy to go. And then basically, if you catch a couple late rains, that adds to insult to injury, because the plant thinks it still has to be making energy, and there's no place for that energy to go.
So it's kind of like taking that cup and trying to dump it into Turk's cup. There's going to be a little bit left behind.
Yep.
We're going to have that cup full, but we still have some left behind. So, and that represents what I call suspended animation, the soybeans, the green leaves and the green pods and all that stuff, because there's no place to go with it.
Correct.
Some of the farmers, I've said, they've looked at their field and said, it doesn't look ready, but then they go out there and their beans are testing 10.5, 12, 11%.
Correct.
So I know Iowa State had an article, and they said, you're just going to have to go slower and get out there and get them.
Yep. And we fight this every year in certain spots. It's just more widespread this year than not. The soybean plant, like we've talked about in the past, has the amazing ability to compensate for what the environment's giving it. And it doesn't have enough room to make the beans any bigger. It's just not physically capable of making the beans any bigger, and that's why the plant set itself up. It has more energy than what it actually needs.
And we typically see this after we have an extended dry and hot period,
right,
that we quickly went into a cooler period, and therefore
that's the tail of what our summer was.
Yeah.
Lots of 100-degree days. I think we were like 10% higher than what our average for days over 90 degrees in the state of Iowa. And like you said, we temperatures cooled down
too quickly.
Yep, and really a rain would probably help to knock some of the rest of the leaves off, and really with the frost.
Sounds like a frost coming this weekend, and so with that, it sounds like it's going to bring an end to the growing season clear down into northern part of Missouri. So a lot of these problems will go away very quickly.
Correct.
Anything else, Ben?
That's pretty much it.
Turk?
I want to talk just a quick moment about the U.S. Supreme Court this week was hearing arguments on a case that Sackett versus EPA on the waters of the U.S. And the Cattlemen's Beef Association has asked EPA to stop enforcing the new regulations that they're trying to implement on the waters of the U.S. on all of the landowners and farmers in the U.S. right now until the Supreme Court rules the first part of next year. And so their EPA has not stopped enforcing, and therefore we're hopeful, and we do think that the Supreme Court may overrule the ability of EPA to regulate the waters of the U.S. on private land as much as they are right now. And again, water, so what is waters of the U.S.? I mean, is it a pothole? Is it a roadside ditch? What is it? Until we get those rules and regulations figured out, we need to put a kind of a whoa on the enforcement of these new regulations. It's been changed in every administration as we go back and forth on what they think the rules are. And the U.S. Supreme Court needs to rule on what it is, and then we won't have to worry about it. The only other thing I had was the markets are really holding up very well in the face of harvest pressure, and a lot of people are, believe it or not, I talked to a farmer this week that was going to be done harvesting 100% of his corn and was going on his beans, did all of his corn before he did his beans, and so. There's a lot of harvest pressure out there right now, and I think that the supply and demand report next week will be the next big market mover, or may not be, but it'll be something to keep an eye on. So
yeah, the market's moved up. Now they've moved back down to where they were the last supply demand report. So,
but still holding in there above the levels that were earlier forecast that we could see in the middle of harvest pressure, and typically next week is getting toward the end of the middle of the highest pressure on soybeans, and so we're getting close to that time of the year when the harvest pressure should be taking its toll.
Yep. So lots of things to watch. So, that concludes the official program, you might say. Now we'll get to the corny joke. I stopped in a diner for lunch the other day, and they had a daily special that was called Golden Soup. So I asked the server, why is it called Golden Soup? She replied, that's because there's 24 carrots in it.
There you go.
Anyhow, thanks for watching this week. We hope that you and your family are safe. Please be careful out there. You're working a lot of extra hours. Be careful, and remember, you got to come home to your family in one piece. So we'll see you next week. Thank you.